At 62, Rick Callahan thought he'd finally done it right. He'd built a tech firm from scratch in his garage back in 1994, back when floppy disks were still a thing. After nearly 3 decades of blood, sweat, and caffeine, he sold the company for $28.60 million. It wasn't about the money anymore, it was about freedom. Freedom to wake up without an alarm clock, fish in the mornings, and finally spend time with his daughter, Rachel, and her family. His daughter had married a sharp, smooth-talking finance guy named Trevor. Rick never liked the guy's eyes to calculating. Too cold, but Rachel seemed happy. And Rick, for all his street smarts, didn't want to start a war over a gut feeling. So when Trevor offered to help streamline Rick's assets so they don't get eaten by taxes, Rick reluctantly agreed. His daughter vouched for him, and besides, Trevor had done well for himself. Maybe it was okay to trust someone else for once. Until the bank cards stopped working. Until the lawyer said his power of attorney had been changed. Until the doctor's office asked about his mental competency evaluation. That's when Rick knew Trevor was trying to steal everything. What Trevor didn't know was that Rick never truly let go of control. The company might have been sold, but Rick still had a few tricks up his sleeve. Trevor had picked the wrong man to outsmart the wrong legacy to mess with. Asterisk, the first real red flag came when Rick tried to withdraw some cash for a weekend fishing trip in the Ozarks. The ATM screen blinked twice before flashing the dreaded message. Transaction denied. Contact your bank. He did, and the voice on the other end said, Mr. Callahan, it appears your account was recently transferred to a family trust under different management. Excuse me. Rick nearly dropped the phone. I didn't authorize any trust. Who did this? According to our records, the authorization was signed digitally, using your credentials. And the trustee listed is Trevor Vance. That name hit him like a hammer. Rick had been in tech long enough to know how easy it was to fake a signature. How dangerous digital permissions could be when mishandled or manipulated. He hung up without another word. Back at his house, Rick poured himself a bourbon, then sat in front of the same laptop he used to run a business with 90 employees. He opened up a folder labeled failsafes. Inside were encrypted files, legacy account backups, and a digital breadcrumb trail. He'd started building the moment Trevor first offered to help, because Rick had always trusted his gut, and his gut had screamed from the beginning, keep a backup. What Trevor didn't know was that Rick never gave him access to the original holdings. The accounts Trevor touched were decoys small enough to feel real, big enough to bait a trap. Rick opened a secure window and typed in a long hidden URL. Accessing Omega folder _64 enter passcode. Asterisk 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 asterisk. A moment later, charts and logs popped up detailing every financial move Trevor had made for the past 4 months. Rick had mirrored the activity through a third-party observer tool tied to a dummy investment shell. He sipped his bourbon and smiled. All right, Trevor, he muttered. You wanted a game. Let's play. The quiet counterattack. Rick knew the legal system could be a blunt instrument, especially when going up against someone as slippery as Trevor. So he turned to what he knew best, tech and strategy. He reached out to an old friend and former co-founder Mason Dell, who had quietly retired 5 years earlier after selling his share of the company. Mason was a cybersecurity wizard with deep connections in the digital forensics world. Trevor's playing games with forged digital signatures and fake trusts. Rick said when they met at a quiet coffee shop 2 towns over, I need everything. He's done, documented, airtight. I want a digital noose. Mason didn't blink. Give me a week. I'll pull metadata from everything he touched. If he used even one unsecured device, I'll find it. While Mason dug into the digital side, Rick began taking careful steps in the physical world. He visited the law firm that allegedly processed the trust papers and requested a full paper trail. He expected resistance and he got it. You don't have authority to request these records, the firm's junior partner said smugly. Rick leaned in. You processed a trust for me without verifying identity. You're about to be named in a very public, very expensive lawsuit unless I see the documents your firm has on file. Now, the smugness faded. 30 minutes later, Rick had a USB drive in his pocket and a scanned file showing a digitally signed document with his signature. Except it wasn't his dot. It was close, almost perfect. But the font spacing was off, and the signature style matched a font Rick had never used. He had evidence now, not just suspicion-proof. By the end of the week, Mason delivered a second payload. Trevor had accessed the trust files using a work-issued laptop tied to his financial firm's network. That laptop had automatically uploaded backup logs to the company cloud. He didn't just steal from you, Mason said. He committed felony fraud using corporate assets. If we notify his employer, they'll have no choice but to investigate. Rick grinned. Time to rattle his cage. He drafted a brief, professional letter to the CEO of Trevor's firm, enclosing 3 choice pieces of evidence and a stern note from Rick's attorney. We believe one of your employees, Mr. Trevor Vance, has been involved in unauthorized financial manipulation, identity fraud, and elder abuse. We are offering you the courtesy of a 48-hour window before law enforcement and media are involved. Then he waited. Trevor didn't know what hit him. 2 days after the letter was sent, Rick received a text from Rachel. Rachel, did you say something to Trevor's firm? He just got called into a meeting. He looks shaken. Rick stared at the message, then typed back. Rick, probably just a routine compliance audit. But it was far from routine. Trevor's employer launched a formal internal review. It froze his access. Legal requested full logs of his account activity. HR scheduled an ethics review. Within 24 hours, Trevor was placed on administrative leave. He came home that night looking pale and sweaty, his confidence shaken. Rachel called her father. Dad, something's wrong. Trevor won't tell me anything, but he's acting like he's being hunted. He thinks someone's framing him. Rick almost laughed. He might be right, but it's not a frame. It's a mirror. He's finally seeing what he looks like. The next day, Rick filed a fraud complaint with the state's Financial Crimes Division, submitting everything: the forged documents, metadata, and corporate usage logs. It was now a legal matter. Mason helped anonymize Rick's trail. They didn't want Trevor knowing just how much Rick had pulled off under his nose. It was better to let him stew, guessing where the blow had come from. Then came the final stroke. Rick scheduled a family dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant and invited Rachel, Trevor, and a neutral third party, Rick's lawyer. Trevor tried to act normal, but sweat glistened on his brow. When Rick slid a manila envelope across the table, Trevor didn't even reach for it. It's over, Rick said calmly. You sign a confession, return every asset you tried to steal, and walk away quietly. Or this goes public press prosecutors. Sec your career, your freedom, your marriage, all gone. Rachel looked stunned. What is this? What's happening? Rick turned to her gently. I'm sorry, sweetheart, but your husband tried to destroy me. I couldn't let that happen. Trevor shook his head, defiant. You don't have the guts. Rick leaned back, smiled, and pointed to the lawyer. He does. Trevor picked up the envelope. He didn't open it. He just stared at it, jaw tight. The walls were closing in, and Rick Callahan wasn't finished yet. Trevor didn't sleep that night. Rick knew, because he received an email from Trevor at 3:42 a.m. Subject. Proposal message. Can we talk privately? Just you and me. There has to be a way to resolve this. Rick didn't reply. Instead, he forwarded the message to his lawyer and Mason. They needed to know that Trevor was beginning to crack. By mid-morning, the lawyer received a call from Trevor's legal counsel. They were requesting an informal mediation. Court filing, just talks. Rick agreed. The next day, in a wood-paneled conference room at a neutral law office, they sat across from each other. Trevor looked like a shadow of himself, his sunken voice thin. I made some mistakes, Trevor began, his hands trembling. But it wasn't all malicious. I just wanted to protect our family's future. Rick interrupted. You forged my name. You restructured my assets without consent. That isn't protecting a family. That's betrayal. Trevor's lawyer pushed papers across the Tibella restitution agreement. Every dollar returned. Full confession. Non-disclosure agreement for Rachel's sake. Rick added one clause. Trevor would never work in finance again. Not without disclosing the full contents of the agreement to any future employer. Trevor balked. That ruins me. Rick stood. You tried to ruin me first. You underestimated the wrong man. After an hour of tense negotiation, Trevor signed. The reckoning had begun. And Rick had taken back control in his terms. The morning sun poured through the kitchen window as Rick sat quietly, sipping black coffee. The weight that had been pressing down on his chest for months was finally lifting. Trevor had signed the restitution papers the day before, agreeing to return every dollar he'd taken and to walk away from the financial world forever. The battle was over, but the emotional scars were still raw. Rachel arrived that afternoon, her eyes red from sleepless nights and tears. She sat down across From Rick, hesitant but determined. "Dad," she said softly, "I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I wanted to believe Trevor was different. That he loved our family." Rick reached across the table, taking her hand. "I know, Rachel. Love makes us blind sometimes. But protecting family isn't always easy. Sometimes it means standing firm, even when it hurts the most." Rachel nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I want to make this right. For you, for us." Together, they began the slow process of healing, mending trust, rebuilding bonds. Rick's granddaughter, Emily, brought light and laughter back into the house, reminding them all of what truly mattered. In the weeks that followed, Trevor honored the agreement. The stolen assets were quietly restored. Legal authorities dropped charges after his full cooperation, and his career in finance was effectively over. Rick knew the road ahead for Trevor would be difficult, but justice had been served, turning his own pain into purpose. Rick launched a foundation dedicated to educating seniors about financial scams and elder abuse, hoping to prevent others from suffering as he had. Speaking at community centers and retirement homes, he shared his story not to seek sympathy, but to empower others. As spring gave way to summer, Rick found himself back on the lake, rod in hand, Emily by his side. The water shimmered under the warm sun, and for the first time in a long while, Rick felt truly free. Sometimes, the last move is the most important, and Rick Callahan had played his masterfully.